a while. We had some of the old ones producing new versions of their games. So that's kind of interesting. I know you have some games you've been reviewing and
yeah, I think you forgot for a minute there, Roy, that my main coding knowledge died with the Amiga computer. So yes,
I used to we did some 3D. I did some 3D sort of shooters, but I went as far as doing some jumping around in the scene and 3D things. And if you don't do it properly, then you render far too much, and it's extremely slow. You don't get a good frame rate, and it's really amazing what type of performance you can get today. Lots of polygons being rendered. Even so, you couldn't do that with all kinds of tricks that happen. And that requires a good engine to be available. And I think the open source engines have not been so much up to date. You have the ID Software one, but
just as a final note there. I used to be an armchair expert years ago when it comes to things like that. Reading articles when I was really into the PlayStation 1 and lots of games for that, and you read a lot of articles and you get all knowledgeable about stuff that you'll never ever use, but development kits and rotoscoping and things like that, and you read them as developers being interviewed, and it's sort of interesting, but really all I want to know is, what's this game going to be like? That was all I cared about. And then you get into all sorts of inane debates about CPU speed and RAM, and it's pointless, really. So, armchair expert about nothing, which continues a theme from before. But anyway, we can carry on.
Yeah, we talked before about Mario and Nintendo and the whole thing. I mean, some of the more complicated things they could claim some so-called ownership on is how they can have the background scroll in a different speed than the foreground, and this is they have this technique they have with sprites and how they basically move banners in such a way so it doesn't take much CPU power. And you have all kinds of you probably don't think about when you play, but it's pretty amazing what you can do with the very, very old processors if you're talking about days of Nintendo and the Sega and everything like that. You had extremely weak processors, and if you consider what type of graphics you had, you could yield from these computers, it's pretty amazing, and you had to put lots of thoughts into how to generate the frames and how to move things about and do all sorts of tricks in the bit level of code. So to do math.
I just figured out there that I don't think we'll be that popular in Nintendo's office. The days of Nintendo, I'm pretty sure they're thinking, hey, wait a minute, we're still going. We've got consoles out there, we're still going. Our days are still numbered. Anyway.
Well, just a couple of points to end that bit on. Firstly, the fact that I'd like to say that and I sound like it's going to be one of those when I was a lad type rants, but certainly my coding heyday was, or I was in my coding peak, we certainly didn't have engines and software development kits and all this sort of fancy trickery that you have today. And it's certainly the developers today, it's a lot better environment to be creative and innovative. However, what I would say is a point that Roy sort of touched on just very briefly about the Nintendo, and I'm going to refer it to the Commodore Amiga. There might be a lot of people that would say it's a bad idea for the hardware to be closed down. As I was saying to Roy a while ago, the thing with the Amiga was we were writing routines, we were writing code, and we knew that our code was going to be deployed onto a certain machine. It'd be exactly the same as ours. That allowed a lot of fancy trickery to go on that couldn't have been done if we weren't sure what processor, what machine, what system our software was going to be deployed to. So it did have its advantages, certainly more so than today in that respect. So I just wanted to make that point. But now we'll move on to my gaming, because I've gone from programmer of yesteryear to lamer of today. And we're going to move on to a few reviews and a bit of software that I've discovered over the weekend. People that read my site might be wondering why I've concentrated so much on games this weekend. It's because I've been busy last week installing Linux for a few new users who've just moved from Windows over to us, as it were. And one of the questions that they asked after the Facebook question came out, and can they send emails, as if emails were the sole remit of a Microsoft operating system. And once we got all that out of the way, the next question was games. So whilst installing their operating systems, I took the opportunity to have a little look at see what had just been released and catch up with the game scene on Linux. And I had quite a few nice surprises. And the first one, which will be linked in my show notes, was covered on my site a day ago, and it's called Rhizome. It's a multiply massive online role-playing game, and it's one of my favourite genres. It's probably the only type of game I go back to time and time again. And this one's a bit unique because it has a sort of Avatar twist is the best way I can describe it. It's set in an alien world, and it's a traditional magic, fighting, crafting, harvesting type roleplay game that you might see in Eternal Lands or Plane Shift or Regnum or all the other great titles for Linux. But this one stands out from the crowd a little bit because I have to say, after looking at it, it's probably the most graphically impressive native Linux role-playing game I've ever come across. Even with full resolution settings on this game, on a very, well, considered quite low spec machine, it runs 60 frames a second, no problem. It's absolutely fantastic. Now, there is a downside. It was initially released for Windows only, I believe about 2004.
Yeah, it used to be proprietary as well.
Yes.
Sorry. Yeah.
And it's just recently got itself a native Linux open source client, which is why I'm speaking about it now. The downside, if people want to call this a downside, is that after the 21-day free trial, it is roughly £7 a month to continue membership. But I think if you do enjoy the 21-day trial, in Days of World of Warcraft and their subscriptions, I don't personally think it's that much to ask. So that's worth checking out and having a little look at. If you go over to the OpenBytes site, I've got a little trailer that's off YouTube and a quick screenshot, but really doesn't do it justice because to see this thing moving is quite incredible, to see it in the flesh, as it were. So I'd recommend you download that. And if you're a roleplay fan, you've got no excuse. If you're not, just give it a look. For the quality of a smaller software house and the quality of work that's out there now. It used to be traditional where the big game companies would have the fancy graphics and the high production values. But you look at this title and it's made by a small software house and it's absolutely fantastic. Very polished title, very, very good. So that's one to check out. Moving on to a very quick one. This is a title called Zaz, and I wish I'd never discovered this, because it's as addictive as a Class A drug. So if anybody's thinking of playing this game, you better dedicate a little bit of time, because I was hooked on this for a good couple of hours, and it was quite difficult to get myself off to actually write about it. It's called Zaz. Again, it's been featured on OpenBytes. It's a puzzly shoot-'em-up type game involving balls and slides, is the best way to describe it. And without confusing myself and you in trying to describe how you play it, imagine mix and match snap with balls is probably the best way I can describe it. Very, very good puzzler. Very, very good if you went for a download to finish. Very good if you went for somebody to tweet you and you're sitting around and you've got 5 minutes to spare. But like I said, it comes with a warning. You'll have difficulty putting it down because it's very addictive. So that's another title. It's released under the GPL. Very, very good.
Version 3, I think.
Yes, it is. Yeah, version 3. So I highly recommend it. It'll be in the show notes, and again, it's covered on OpenBytes. And finally, we have a distro, and this is one that I've covered for quite a long time. I've spoken to the creator of this particular distro and interviewed him previously, and his name's Scott Jarvis, and his distro's Puppy Arcade. Version 10 just come out, and I've had the opportunity to give it a quick run, as I've got version 9 on a dedicated rig that was otherwise junk that I installed it onto. It's an excellent distro, and it's aimed completely or solely at emulating other computer systems. I could probably spend about 5 minutes listing off all the systems it can emulate, with the help of obviously the independently written emulators. But you've got Amiga, Atari ST, Apple, Commodore, Game Gear, Genesis, Mega Drive, Master System, Neo Geo, etc., etc. The whole shebang. And it's an excellent distro for emulation. It'd be good if anybody's got an idea of making their own cabinet. and I've been following it since I think about version 4 or 5. So that has been released. It's based on Puppy Linux, so it's a very popular. It's derived from a very popular distro.
There isn't a version of it, you know. I think, what's it called? A very funny... Oh, Quirky. It's called Quirky 1.6, I think was released a few days ago in Barry, the guy behind...
Yep.
Yeah, so I think that's it. The reason it's called Quirky, it's kind of a test